Lots of disruptions today. I apologize and thank you for your patience. So every level of government can tax. What do we mean levels of government? We'll learn this. There's this idea called federalism. We have levels of government. At the highest level of government is the federal government, the United States government, based out of the national capital in
Washington, D.C.
With the current head of the executive branch of the United States government right now is
Trump.
Donald J. Trump, the President of the United States. So the federal government is the highest level. And then there's 50 states, so our state government is?
State government.
The state of Florida. Led by, who's the senior level, who's the, heads the executive department of a state government? What is that person called?
Mayor.
No, that's a city.
The counselor.
Good.
Governor.
Governor. So a governor runs a state. So the current governor of Florida is this man named Ron DeSantis. So we got a state government. At the lowest level, you have things like cities and towns and counties. So if you live in Milton, you are under the head of the executive branch, or the senior person in the government in a city level is called a mayor. So you got a city mayor, you get a state governor, you got the federal or U.S. government level president. Guess what? Each of those layers can tax you. So you might be paying a tax for Milton for a property tax. You're definitely paying Florida state taxes, particularly a sales tax. And you pay taxes for the federal government too. Typically your annual U.S. income tax. So a state tax, sales tax, how does that work, Abby? If I go to a store, I go to Target and I'm buying something, the price tag says $1. When I ring it up at the counter, how much do I actually pay?
Like $1.20.
You're probably paying $1.06, $1.07 because we got a 6-7% state sales tax. So that dollar goes to Target as part of their profit. That 6-7 cents goes to the state of Florida as a tax, so they could do things like hire police and repair roads and bridges and do all the things the state does.
Why don't they include the tax on the price tag of items? So that, like, instead of adding the tax to everything at the very end, why don't they add the tax to the items? So, like,
They
I don't know,
could.
it's a question, because then you actually know how much you're actually getting.
They could, and it's easy math, but if you're running a store, do you want your goods and your services to be more expensive or cheaper? Or at least look more expensive or look cheaper?
Yeah.
I think they could easily do it. They just add 6-7% to every, price tag. So instead of a price tag that says $10, it would say $10.70. And then you would know what you're gonna pay when you check out. That makes sense.
That was just rude to me.
But amongst the many tricks that people who run stores do is they want their prices to look as low as possible. So why add 7% to their prices?
I think Canada does that, or like Australia and Britain, they have the tax added.
I think you're right, and they do. Yes, ma'am. So it's clearly something you can do, but we don't do. Taxes. Biggest part of the money government has. You'll see that on the quiz. Defend the nation. All right. Currently, the entire U.S. military is comprised of volunteers, which means you have to walk up to the military and say, "Hi, I'd like to be a part." The only time that's different is a time of serious national emergency. One of your duties is to defend the nation. And they could have millions and millions of soldiers if they want through something called the draft. How it works right now is there's this agency called the Selective Service Agency. It basically just keeps track of all males 18 to 25. So as soon as you come 18, you register with Selective Service. They have this big list of names. So if we are in this huge knockdown, drag-out war with China and Russia, and we need 1 million soldiers fast, it's done through the Selective Service system, through a draft. They pick 1 million names, and they say, all right, you 1 million Americans, guess what? You're in the Army now. Come on aboard, we'll shave your head, we'll give you a uniform and a rifle, make you run around for a few weeks or months, and then guess what? You're going to the front lines to defend your country. So we have had drafts in the American history. One of the first drafts was during the Civil War. It became very, very, very unpopular. The war that basically ends the draft is a war in a place called Vietnam. The draft was extremely unpopular, and eventually in 1973, right at the end of the Vietnam War, the United States ended the draft. Why do you think a draft would be unpopular, Abby?
Maybe because they just simply don't want to do it and they're being forced to do something they don't want to do.
Few people really like being forced to do something they don't want to do. And then add into that, you're being forced to
Risk your life.
fight a war,
Yeah.
which risks your life or risks being blinded or burnt to pieces or legs blown off. That's a significant sacrifice and a significant level of risk. Now, in some wars, people didn't really resist the draft because there was general agreement the war was necessary. World War II. There's a draft during World War II. Did some people not like it? Yes. Did some people resist the draft? Yes. But it was very rare because most Americans in World War II said, ooh, Hitler and Japan, this is bad stuff. I really need to participate even though I don't want to. Vietnam was different. Vietnam was a relatively small war all the way across the ocean, and most Americans looked at it and says, this really doesn't present a risk to the United States. The Vietnamese are not coming to the United States, and they're not going to march into Washington and take us all over. That was never going to happen. So you're an 18-year-old American at the time of the Vietnam War. You're like, I'm getting drafted to fight a war on the other side of the planet, and I'm going to maybe get my legs blown off or killed. And really, it's not for the direct defense of the United States or our way of life. So that war became very unpopular. The draft sometimes was perceived as unfair also. Some people who could get out of the draft. Who do you think was able to get out of the draft?
Rich people?
One was rich people. How did they do that? There was all these exceptions to the draft, one of which was simple. You could go to college and not be drafted. So who could go to college more often than not? People with money find it easier to send their kids to college than people who don't have money, because if you don't have that money laying around, are you going to be able to send your 18-year-old son to college? No. So if you're poor, your 18-year-old son got drafted and went to Vietnam and took their chances. If you're rich, your 18-year-old son could go to college and not risk being drafted and not risk having their legs blown off or be blind or being killed. So inequalities, inequities like that made the draft system very unpopular. So in 1973, the draft ended. So we still have the selective service system. If you're a male 18 years old, you got to sign up to serve for a draft, but there's no draft right now. It's all volunteer. You brought it up. The current law says only 18 to 25-year-old males are eligible for the draft. Do you think that can or should change, Abigail?
I think a selfish reason is no, just because I don't want to participate in that. But if women are allowed to serve in the army, what is stopping them from adding them for applying to a draft?
Absolutely.
They trust us enough to actually serve in the military, but not to be in a draft. Doesn't make so much sense.
Currently, here we are, July 2020. Women are open to every job in the military right now. So why not draft them? If they could do every job, why not draft them? And there's some lawsuits going on right now to change that law. My expectation is it will happen soon. I will see it, and it will definitely impact all you, that this law will change and the selective service will be open to males and females, precisely because of what Abby said. If a woman could do all the jobs in the military that a man could do, why not have that equality in the draft? Abby doesn't want to be drafted, so she doesn't like that idea. But it's not about what we like and what we agree with. I think most of us can agree that at least sounds fair that if a woman can volunteer and serve in every single military job, probably they should be eligible for the draft too. It's in the courts. We may get to do an exercise on this exact issue. And if I see in the news that that decision has been made, of course we'll tell you. Serve in court, like Abby said, we have this system called trial by jury. There's no judge that throws you in jail. No, the judge just acts like a professional referee for your trial. 12 citizens just like you are the jury. They say you're guilty or innocent. So we have to have juries available. And how do we make sure jury's available? We have this thing called jury duty. You'll get a summons and it says, hey, guess what? Hello, citizen. You've been picked for jury duty. Please show up at the courthouse at this date or time. And if you don't show up, what happens, Abby?
Get arrested.
Because it's a duty. You have to do it. You could also be required to come to court as a witness for a trial. You can't just blow that off and say, no, sorry, I saw a bunch of murders, but I don't feel like showing up. They need you for a witness. They could subpoena you, which is a legal order for you to show up on trial. But mostly we want to focus on jury duty. Now, Abigail, who do you think gets picked to show up on jury duty?
Older people.
They're the ones who are more likely to be picked for juries. But usually how jury duty does is the people they pick for jury duty are the citizens who actually do the important citizenship thing of register to vote. So if you don't register to vote, you don't own property, you're probably going to be able to duck or miss jury duty. Most people who picked for jury duty are those who register to vote. If you're picked for jury duty, does that mean you will actually sit on a jury and go through a trial?
Yes.
No. They pick more than they need for a bunch of reasons. Let's say the courthouse only has one trial. So they need at least 12, right?
Mm-hmm.
What if one gets hit by a bus? What if one gets sick? So a lot of times they'll have alternate jurors. So if you need a jury of 12, you probably need 14. This is America and this is life. If you need 14 people to do anything, how many people do you think you should have show up?
Like more than that.
More than that. Probably like 20. And then guess what? The lawyers in the trial get to throw jurors out. Why? You don't just want 14, 12 random people. You want 12 people who could actually do the job as a juror. So the lawyers involved get to exclude people from the jury. They get to ask questions of the potential jurors. Hi, Abigail. How are you? I'm Steve. I'm a lawyer. I'm representing the state of Florida. You're a potential juror. Do you think you can make fair decisions in a jury trial?
Yeah.
What do you think about the death penalty? This is going to be a murder case. One of the punishments the state of Florida has in a murder case is the death penalty. So, Abigail, since this is a murder case, one of the punishments might be the death penalty. You support the death penalty or are you against it?
Against it.
So in that case, this person may not want Abigail on the jury. This is an assault case. Have you ever been assaulted?
No.
Good for you. But if she said yes, may that lawyer think she's not a fair member of a jury?
Yeah.
How about this? This case is going to be a criminal case, and it's going to be a murder case. And there's going to be a lot of people from the police testifying and giving evidence. Do you trust the police?
Yeah.
See, and this is another thing they'll ask to try to find out whether the jurors are going to be good jurors or not.
So like, I mean, yeah, that's like a way to like not guarantee, but like try to get the best people as the jurors. But I'm also kind of wondering, like, they just call in random amount of citizens. They ask them like maybe a couple questions that you can lie through. So why are they putting so much trust into random citizens into determining someone's fate?
Excellent question. It goes to the basic of our system of government. Let's just start with this simple choice. Who do you feel more comfortable throwing people in jail for crimes? Some government official or a group of fellow citizens?
I'd rather have someone who's trained legally in that field to determine because they can, you know what I'm saying?
Well, you have the people who are trained legally that act as the referees and put the show on.
Mm-hmm.
You got the judge who's trained legally, who's the major referee. You got at least a lawyer on each side who are trained legally, who are supposed to be doing their job in a legal fashion, knowledgeable of the laws and following the laws. So yes, you figure expertise is probably an important thing. Great. And the system provides that expertise in a judge and at least 2 lawyers, one for each competing side. Right. It does seem strange that you'd give 12 average Joes off the street the final call. Do these 12 average Joes off the street make mistakes and blow these decisions? Yes. Do innocent people go to jail?
Yeah.
Do guilty people go free?
Yep.
Yes.
Because it's kind of hard for people who aren't have a special eye for evidence and stuff to determine what's important and what isn't. So an important piece of evidence might be thought in a juror's mind that it's not that important or it doesn't mean much.
The system we have has weaknesses. You could even say that it has flaws and it's not perfect. But here's what the founding fathers would say. And I'll paraphrase because I'm not one. I am not Thomas Jefferson. The founding fathers would say this. All right, you have a choice. Somebody has to be the person that says, yes, you're going to jail for breaking a law. Who should it be? The government that has all the power, that owns the courts, that owns the police, and actually writes the laws, or the people? Which one better protects your rights as a citizen? The founders would say, if you give the government, call it a king, all the power, will that government, call it a king, throw innocent people in jail? Will this government destroy your rights? Yes. The founders would say, your rights are better protected by 12 of your fellow citizens trying to do their best job of being fair. The founders would argue, potentially, and some lawyers argue that you'll hear this come up in law and it's going to blow your mind. Better 100 guilty men go free than 1 innocent man goes to jail. You may not agree with it, but the idea is the system has to be biased to make sure that citizens and their rights are protected as best as possible. And if you make mistakes, the better mistake to make is let guilty people go free than innocent people go to jail. And the way you control the power of the government is by giving the power to the people. In North Korea, it's pretty easy. The government says you're guilty and you go to jail.
Yeah.
That's it. The government creates the crimes. The government owns all the secret police. The government owns the entire court system. You don't have that check or protection of a jury of citizens saying, hey, government, some of this evidence is shaky. Or maybe there's no evidence at all. Or maybe you messed up. Because in the United States today, if the police don't do their jobs right, the jury should find that out and see that and say, guess what? The police aren't doing their jobs right. You aren't guilty. You should go free. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Now, not to get too deep, in some kind of trials, you can pick a judge instead of a jury. A lot of that is in civil trials where the case is very complicated. Let's say it's a civil trial, means nobody goes to jail. It's a lawsuit, a company versus a company. And it's over all this technical legal stuff. Who do you want making the decision then? 12 yahoos off the street or a judge who really knows all this stuff.
Yeah, judge.
In some cases, you can pick a judge because you want an absolute professional who knows all these complicated issues. Not 12 people off the street who are going to be like, I don't understand a single word they're saying.
Yeah.
Because that happens, right? Yes. So yes, I mean, it's easy to look at the Americans around you and say, I don't want 12 of these people telling me I'm guilty and throwing me in jail forever. But it's protection, and it protects you from the government saying, we don't like Abby. She's part of Black Life Matter. We don't like what she's saying, let's throw her in jail. Or she's Antifa. Or she's a communist. Or she's a pro-life radical. If the government has something against you, the idea in our system is you're protected from that government because the only people who could throw you in jail is 12 fellow citizens.
Mm-hmm.
All right? We'll talk about that a lot this year when we get towards the judicial branch and law in America. Let's suffice here, if you get called for jury duty, it's a duty, you got to show up. You got to attend school. Each state runs its own school systems. Who knows what we're going to do in Florida? We think in a few weeks, some of you may be here, some of you will be online, but I don't know what's going to happen. What I do know is, as far as we know for civics, it's a requirement to attend school. States do it differently. You can start at 6, 7 to 16, 17. And of course, most states allow authorized homeschool programs. Why do we have schools? What's the point? Why torture poor children who should be free and playing and frolicking in nature? Why do we make you go through 12 years of sitting at a desk?
To educate the youths that are going to grow up and one day lead the country.
Sure. One day you will all be voters. You will all be workers. You will be the doctors. You will be the lawyers. You will be the military generals. You will be the police. You will be the entrepreneurs starting your own companies. You will be the influencers on YouTube, if you aren't already. Who can tell? And at least most modern countries have decided to prepare children to make that transition into adulthood. We need this thing called education, and this is how we do it in the United States. Is it the best possible way? Probably not. Are there other ways to do it? Sure. Some of you will be taking this course online, some of you will be doing it on FLVS, and some of you will be actually sitting in a classroom. Who's to say what's best? Because people are different. What works for Abby may not work for you. All right? We're not going to debate these points, only to say, as far as civics goes, you are required to attend some sort of education. Bam! Why? We need an educated voter. We need educated workers. Responsibilities, this is softer, touchier, feelier. These are things you don't have to do. You don't have to vote. You could live on the top of a mountain to the age of 120 and never vote ever. Are the cops ever going to throw a bag over your head and drag you away and arrest you for not voting?
No.
No. Do you have to respect others?
No.
Do you have to tolerate others' differences?
No.
Right? Do you have to volunteer and help at an animal shelter or a food bank or here at school?
No.
Can you be completely selfish and self-interested?
Yes.
These things are responsibilities. These things you should consider doing as a good citizen of this team called the United States of America, but you don't have to do them, okay? Any questions on that?
No.
And that's it. This one was a mess with phone calls and wasps and everything else. I apologize. That's what happens when you go live.